Our next speaker, I'm excited. We have 2 speakers left this afternoon. Our next speaker is a chiropractor, Eileen Karpfinger, and she's up in Outram, so she's local here. But she has hosted radio podcasts, she has been producing on TV, and really looks into the holistic solutions of how to overcome whatever's going on in your body, but really looking at that holistic side of things rather than going with mainstream allopathic medicine and what are the alternatives there. And so today she's going to be talking about insulin and cortisol and how to create a lifestyle that supports, I'm going to say this wrong, Thrivival. And so I'm really excited to have you here and have you talking, because I think you share such amazing knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Great conference we're having, isn't it? So thanks for being here. I am Dr. Eileen Karpfinger. I'm a functional nutritionist and a chiropractor in Oakland, as Christina was saying. And I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm sharing this information today and who I am and what this is that I'm doing. So I was born in Wisconsin. I'm one of 5 kids, there's 5 surviving kids of 7. Was born really big and fed not organic, formula, cow's milk formula my whole life, no breastfeeding, fully vaccinated for that age group. And kind of grew up soft and a little in trouble, like my health was not good. And my mother's side of the family is all diabetics. My dad died at the age of 73 with a perfectly healthy body from parietal lobe dementia, which is known as type 3 diabetes. And I've been, since the age of 14, living my life really extremely healthy by all standards, aside from what I'm going to be telling you about here, where I was very active, ate as much as I could organic, went vegan really early, and lived a very healthy, active life, out in the sunshine all the time. And somehow, I'm finding myself, as I'm nearing menopause, I'm reaching, my mother's a diabetic from the age of 38. She's been using insulin. She's 80 years old now. And I'm 53, I'll be 53 this summer. And I have markers of metabolic syndrome, even though I'm doing things completely differently than my mother. And can you guys understand how upsetting that could be when I've tried so hard to not be my mother, right? And so, I love my mother, but I don't want her health conditions, right? And so why I'm here to talk about this, when Christina asked what I wanted to talk about, I was like, you know what? I want to talk about insulin and cortisol and what cortisol is and its fact and why it influences our insulin state and where we are as a society. So that's why I'm doing this today, and I hope you can all relate.
One session.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good. So if you know the body and you know the functions of the body, we have 5 hormones that bring blood sugar up. We have systems in our body that bring up blood sugar. We have glucagon, human growth hormone, cortisol, testosterone, and adrenaline. And that means our body is using 5 different strategies as we've evolved as a species to help us when we're in trouble when we don't have enough blood sugar. Do you know anybody that doesn't have enough blood sugar now? Do you know anybody? The reality is we have one strategy that brings blood sugar down. So as an evolutionary being, we have one strategy for the happenstance, maybe possibility that every once in a while you might have too much blood sugar. That's how our body is designed. And if you know where we're at as a society and how insulin is the major topic, right? Blood sugar, too high of blood sugar is a major topic for us. It's helpful to understand how out of sorts our society is from our evolutionary beings. Does this make some sense to people? Okay, because really, if insulin is only one strategy for us, and we have all these other strategies to bring up our blood sugar, we must be off mark as to what our bodies as these cave people or early species were doing, right? So here's a, this is the reality, right? If we were cave people eating fast food, that's who we are now, right? And that guy's going to be in a lot more trouble than if he was eating fresh off the savannah, eating his raw meat and his berries that he picked here and there every once in a while, right? So who understands insulin? Anybody know what it is? Okay, let's talk a little bit about it. So insulin is a peptide hormone produced by beta cells of the pancreatic islets. So it's produced in the pancreas, and it's considered the main anabolic hormone of the body. So anabolic means it builds tissue. Catabolic means it breaks down tissue. So insulin's job is to build tissue. It's to make us bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, okay? Let's look into that a little more. So that picture is showing insulin is the yellow, and when insulin comes and it locks in on the insulin receptor, it will allow glucose to come into the cell, okay? And if you block that insulin from getting into the insulin receptor, you now have glucose floating around in the tissue, as well as way more insulin trying to pump itself out because something's wrong here. We're not getting it into that little blue insulin receptor, okay? So diabetics eventually develop blood sugar problems, but diabetes is not a blood sugar problem, it's an insulin problem. Is this new information for a lot of people? Okay, so insulin is a major metabolic hormone making diabetes a hormone problem. Well before this hormone gets into to the point that it affects our blood sugar and eventually damages our pancreas, we develop a process called insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is really, does anybody know anybody that's a diabetic? Okay, anybody here? Well, I won't ask that. If you're paying attention, most people have had a gallbladder issue before they had diabetes. And it's because your liver is fatty from the damage of the insulin resistance before it gets to damaging your pancreas. So it's not a blood sugar problem, but it's an insulin resistance problem, okay? But when you have liver problems, you're gonna have insulin resistance usually as well. Neither improve from balancing blood sugar. Constant insulin exposure causes fatty liver, which will lead to fatty pancreas as well. And both can be reversed in most cases. Neither can be reversed with medication. And if only managed, neither can heal or reverse, and both will progress and destroy a person's health. But this is where we are today as a society. Most people, 1 out of 2 adults, have fatty liver and metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is one step before diabetes, okay? So we're way off mark, and so let's take a look at what is causing this. So what is this epidemic of insulin resistance? Is insulin actually, in fact, activated by glucose? Who thinks that insulin is activated when you eat something sugary, insulin just takes charge? Okay, so only one person in the room thinks that, or a few people. Okay, insulin, in fact, is primed, and over 70% of its secretion is stimulated by hormones in the stomach and small intestines that respond to our food well before it's broken down and any sugar is in the bloodstream. So there's been some interesting studies of showing workers in a, have any of you been to a Jelly Belly store? You just walk into that store and your blood sugar, your insulin is going to respond, right? It's going to respond to just the sugar. Oh. LiveAware. So our insulin levels are stimulated well before blood is in, our blood sugar goes up. And insulin is stimulated first before all of that, right? So this is how proteins stimulate insulin at nearly half the potency of carbohydrates. So there's a lot of people, maybe some of you in this room, that are on high protein diets, and some of you are still nearing metabolic syndrome because of this situation. And it's this processed food like powdered proteins and flours can stimulate insulin even more than white sugar. There's that.
Say that again, please.
So even protein and flours, so powdered proteins and flours can stimulate insulin even more than white sugar. So basically anything processed, any floured anything, even if it's floured almond, it's going to be a little bit more insulin reactive than just eating an almond, right? So since blood sugar lowers glucose, since blood glucose lowers after eating since blood glucose lowers after eating faster than insulin, by the time your next meal or snack comes around, it has not had time to bring the insulin back to baseline, and it gets bumped up again with each extra snack. So who do we think has created the snack aisle? Most likely the snack people, right? And who are the people that mentioned the phrase, breakfast is the most important meal of the day? Kellogg or Toast, right? So what we're looking at is our conditioned response of what we're being marketed to. You have to eat more than 3 meals a day. In fact, why don't you eat 7 small meals a day? That's been kind of a regular go-to, right? And it feels comfortable because you're never really that hungry. But the reality is your insulin load is super high every time you're eating something that demands insulin. So what we're looking at is a way to, as we're going through this conversation, create a situation where your insulin demand is less. And the less you demand insulin, the less likely you'll be to create insulin resistance. Alrighty? The way I look at this is kind of like somebody that is hard of hearing getting hearing aids. And you know how they have to have it louder and louder and louder because they're damaging their hearing, and so they have to have it louder and louder? It's as though if you're using insulin a lot, eventually it's just going to have too limiting of a message, and you have to have more of it to affect that insulin receptor to respond. So let's take a look at blood sugar levels and time. If you look at a carbohydrate, we all know that there's going to be this spike, right? If you eat, let's say you go to a Chinese restaurant and you have a bunch of white rice and a bunch of sugary vegetables and some meat in there, right? And you eat to your heart's content, and about 45 minutes later, you're famished, right? Remember that? That's the carbohydrate sugar response, because what's happening is with that pink going up, you're also going to see insulin going up, and now you've got insulin in the system, and you have the blood sugars now dropped because the sugar's gone into the cell, and then they block off the insulin receptor, and you have nowhere for the sugar to go except to fat, okay? Then I want you to take a look at proteins. Proteins isn't as hard, but take a look at that blue fat line. If you eat fat, what do you think your demand is on insulin? Do you see how there's no insulin demand? 0 insulin demand when you're eating fat, right? So part of our answer to that caveman diet is not going to be protein or carbohydrates, it's going to be fat. That's a big part of our response. Is this new information for anybody? Great. So what we're looking at when we're looking at fats are ketones. And what are ketones? There's one thing that will stop ketosis and all these amazing benefits in its tracks, and it's insulin. Okay, so ketones detox the body, they promote repair, they make more energy, they increase hormone sensitivity, it activates longevity genes, it starves off cancer, decreases inflammation, increases brain activity and memory, builds powerful muscles and keeps muscle from breaking down during workouts, and the body prefers ketones rather than glucose. And insulin is the only way to stop ketosis. So if we can be in a state of ketosis, we have a greater chance of reducing our insulin demand. And we'll take a look here.
If we're in ketosis?
If you're in ketosis,
You have more insulin demand?
you have less insulin demand, right? So what's causing this effect in our society of when you take a snack in, what's really occurring in that situation? You're going to have a lot of increase in blood sugar, and then it's going to decrease dramatically because insulin's going to take it out. And right at the bottom there, it says low blood sugar cravings, right? And so you're going to have now this need to eat again because you're so hungry because there's no blood sugar. No blood sugar in the system. But take a look at this. If we start anywhere, you're feeling tired and hungry, you're going to eat food, you're going to make insulin, your cell's going to resist insulin, the sugar stores as fat, and then all of a sudden you've got no sugar in your cells and you're hungry again. And this insulin resistance cycle starts happening. And I've seen it for my patients, my family members. I've got family members that would start shaking after 2 hours of not eating because their body's just so used to running on sugar that they're hungry all the time. And it's not their fault, it's just the system right here. They're not any less capable of managing their food intake than I am, no more willpower, but they happen to be burning sugar instead of burning fat, and it gets you into this cycle. Are we making sense of this? Does this make sense to people? Okay. So what's the cascading effect of this epidemic of insulin resistance? Let's look at insulin coming into the prefrontal cortex. And there's something called the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, adrenals, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, and I'll go into that in a second again too. But it's going to stimulate hormones in the brain. You're going to intake food. You're going to have less hepatic glucose production. You're going to have lipogenesis. You're going to make fat, and you're going to decrease fat breakdown, and you're going to increase muscle glycosynthesis. You're going to have sugar in your muscles, which is painful. That's what that lactic acid is. And you're going to have glucose uptake. This is all part of what our body's going to be doing when we have an insulin response, okay? And the effect on the heart, anybody know here how many, how much of an increase women alone have had in heart attacks and heart issues over the past 10 years? It's gone up 300%. There's that many more women in trouble with heart issues, and I think most of it is type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. So we're all pretty clear on this cascading effect of insulin demand creating this cycle, right? If we add to this the factor that magnifies this and makes this the epidemic that we have now, the way that we add to this that makes it magnified is cortisol. And who knows what cortisol is? A few people in the room. So cortisol is the stress hormone. And it's not the stress hormone of somebody walking in the room with a machine gun saying, I'm going to shoot all of you. That's adrenaline, right? Cortisol is your low-grade, I've got stress every minute of the day hormone. And it's there not because you should have stress every minute of the day, but because the nice response of cortisol is waking up in the morning, not to the alarm, but just waking up and kind of getting up gently in the day. That getting up part is a gentle cortisol response. We need cortisol for that, and it's a good thing. But most of us are using cortisol for managing stress every minute of the day and throughout the night. And I'm going to show you what this looks like eventually pertaining to insulin, okay? So let's see here. So cortisol is going to increase blood sugar. It's going to heighten memory and attention. So it feels like anybody like stress a little bit because they feel like they're a little more focused? That's what that cortisol response is. It increases blood pressure, it decreases sensitivity to pain, it decreases serotonin, so you can have, I forget the name of it right now, but there's actually a syndrome that is, the fancy word for it is you just simply can't enjoy joy. There's nothing to be happy about. Nothing can trigger happiness from you. And an overstimulated cortisol response is going to create that worse and worse to where you just can't climb out of it. And then it suppresses the immune system. Here's another slide like that. Weakened immune system, it messes with the heart, creates high blood pressure, high blood sugar because it's turning off your insulin. Insulin's not going to let it into the cell. Digestive issues, nerve problems, anxiety, depression, headaches. So cortisol and glucocorticoid cortisol, a glucocorticoid steroid hormone, is produced from cholesterol in the 2 adrenal glands located on top of each kidney, and it's normally released in response to events and circumstances such as waking in the morning, exercising, and acute stress. But cortisol's far-reaching systemic effects play roles in the body's efforts to carry out its process and maintain homeostasis. So it's actually got its place, but we're overusing it way too much, right? And it regulates energy by selecting the right type of and amount of substrate, carbohydrate, fat, or protein, that the body needs to meet the physiological demands placed on it. When chronically elevated, cortisol can have really bad effects on weight, immune function, and chronic disease risks. Let's see. Growth hormone, did you want to see this?
Excuse me. I'm really baffled by waking up in the morning causes the rise in cortisol.
So we have a fight or flight response. She was wondering how waking up in the morning stimulates cortisol. We have a fight or flight response. And some of fight or flight response, some of the sympathetic response in our body is a healthy response. It's always healthy if you're truly in danger, but if you're using the fight or flight response when you're not in physical danger, you're working towards disease state in your body. And so just waking up in the morning, you do activate a slight sympathetic response, and it's a healthy response.
Okay.
Let me just go into that a little bit because it's kind of interesting. So would you rather, as a practitioner, seeing somebody who's stressed, see them run and fight or fall over limp from a stress response? Run and fight, right? So falling over limp is a response that is a really unhealthy parasympathetic response. That when you're in a situation of dire fight or flight, that you literally just can't cope and you fall over, right? That is a stress response, but it's way better to have an overactive fight or flight response in true danger, right? It's just an interesting thing because it's not like parasympathetic is where we should live all the time. There's parts of parasympathetic that we should not be in when we're in a state of danger, right? And then sympathetic, we should be in that state sometimes. During a soccer game, it's a good place to be, but not a fight for your life, but maybe run faster for that ball, right? So we have a reason to be in sympathetic state during our daily lives that is healthy. So growth hormones cortisol, glucagon, and epinephrine make your insulin resistance stronger. This will make your blood sugar go up even more. And here are some actions that have been shown to elicit an acute cortisol reaction. So take a look at these things here and you figure out if you're probably having an acute cortisol reaction a lot of the day. Who here slept well last night? Oh, I didn't. My daughter and my husband showed up at 11 o'clock last night and surprised me in my hotel room. So I didn't sleep until 12:30. And so I had an acute cortisol reaction last night. Refined sugar in grains. I saw most of you at dinner last night. Alarm clock going off is an acute cortisol reaction. By the way, I homeschooled my kids, and one of the things that I feel is the best gift that I gave them in homeschooling them was they never woke up to an alarm. They never woke up until they wanted to. Which was, I just think of how much stress our children have to be at school at 8 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning.
And daylight savings time.
In daylight savings time, right?
Spring forward's a nightmare.
Right. So texts or responding to a text, checking your email, these are all things that can create an acute cortisol response. Microwave proximity, running late, just that rush. Driving in general, unless you're, I mean, there's a few people that can probably drive and not be on an acute cortisol response. Mild dehydration, I can tell you I haven't drank enough here because I'm not finding quality water, so I choose to not drink, and I think that is causing an acute cortisol response. Financial stress, arguments or disagreements, and unhealthy relationships.
Facebook.
What's that?
Facebook should be on there.
Yeah, well, Facebook is responding to checking, I should say, checking an email and checking, yeah. So your stressometer, there's a price to pay. Today we see epidemically low levels of testosterone and insulin resistance is growing at a terrifying rate. It's a mess, but stress is part of life, right? Not the stress we deal with. Modern lifestyle stress is invented. It will not harm us, kill us, eat us, nor do we need to run it down to feed ourselves or our families. We have created the stress associated with much of what we deal with on a daily basis, and we have created the social construct that keeps us swimming in cortisol. What is worse, we have taught this to our children and convinced them is real and should be accepted as such. So I talked to you about the HPA response. That's the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenaline response, which creates cortisol. This is the stress response. This is just the detail of the stress response. And fight or flight, we talked about that. Here's some of the things that happen during a fight or flight response, right? Our vision. Just think of you running from a lion on the savannah. You're going to increase muscle to the large muscles of your body, increase blood to the muscles of your body, so to the large muscles like your legs and your arms for fighting or running. You're going to have acute vision so that you can see better. Your brain's going to signal, you're going to take all the blood from your guts, because this is not a time to eat, sleep, get rid of waste, or make babies. So there's no blood for your organs, and it's all going to go to fighting or flighting, right? So rest and digest or fight or flight, the switch is either on or off. One thing that I do as a chiropractor, my husband's in the room and he's also a chiropractor, our first job that we do with the kind of chiropractic we do is try to help people switch off their fight or flight response. You're laying on a table in a room with nice music playing, you should not have to have any stress response on, right? So you're laying there. What we're doing is checking where you're holding that in your body, and as you can let it go, we're seeing you turn off your fight or flight response. Who's done floats? Float tanks? Have you noticed how beneficial that is? You're going in there in part to try to switch off this response. Meditation, all these things. So cortisol, along with its partner epinephrine, is best known for its involvement in the fight or flight response and temporary increase in energy production at the expense of processes that are not required for immediate survival. So this is the crux of what we're doing. We keep habitually using cortisol as the way to just stay in the game. Making sense? So the cycle of cortisol and insulin resistance. So here's how an example of how the stress response operates as its intended survival mechanism. An individual is faced with a stressor. A complex hormone cascade ensues, and the adrenals secrete cortisol. Cortisol prepares the body for fight or flight response by flooding it with glucose and supplying an immediate energy source to the large muscles. So can you see why we would shut down insulin so that the blood can stay in the bloodstream and get to the muscles? And you'd shut down the ability for the cells to get the to get the glucose, and instead it's going to go into the blood and into the muscles, right? And then cortisol inhibits insulin production, and in an attempt to prevent glucose from being stored, favoring its immediate use. And then cortisol narrows the arteries, while epinephrine increases heart rate, both of which force blood to pump harder and faster. And the individual addresses and resolves the situation, hormone levels return to normal. So this is what's supposed to happen, but what we're seeing otherwise is that you have, you can see my thing here, you have blood sugars high, you have a cortisol response, which is going to create blood sugar to be high. You're going to have, it triggers some insulin to go up, but then the cortisol is going to block it again, and you're going to try to get, it's just going to be this cycle that keeps happening. And over here, too much insulin causes insulin resistance, which leads to metabolic stress and elevation of cortisol, and finally a vicious cycle forms. And what can we do about it? So here are some ways that you can refine your body and mind reactions to perceived stress. So if you get your quality sleep, being physically fit, we're going to talk about some other things here in a bit. Mental conditioning, so meditation and some auditory response so that you can condition yourself out of that response. Avoiding chemical exposure, periodic fasting, breath work, meditation, body and nervous system work, goal setting, and positive social activities. And then, eating to not trigger insulin demand. This is something I've had to teach a number of people because it's pretty hard to not just go back to something that, I mean, most of what's available to us is going to create an insulin demand, right? So the way that we can not trigger an insulin demand is becoming an efficient fat burner. And to do that, you're going to start your ketogenic generators. And has anybody done ketogenic stuff? It's pretty tough, isn't it? It's pretty tough to stay in ketosis. And ketosis is fat burning instead of sugar burning, but it's really beneficial. And the answer is pretty simple. You just basically fast for a good part of the day. And then if you eat, when you're eating, you eat foods that are low in insulin demand, you're going to see a response that you're going to start burning fat and just all of a sudden not be as hungry. Have you noticed that in ketosis? You're just not as hungry, right? And that's great because you're not on that wheel. So you eat a high-fat, moderate protein, and no sugar, no processed foods that readily turn into sugar like grains and starches. And by snacking, you're raising your blood glucose and insulin levels in between meals. And since blood glucose lowers after eating faster than insulin, by the time your next meal or snack comes around, it has not come back to baseline and gets bumped up again with the next snack, only to end the day with a higher than baseline insulin level, and will slowly start to come down as you sleep.
Is that even if it's a fat or a protein snack?
No, this is about a high insulin demand. So if you're eating a snack, I mean, if you eat a stick of butter, this isn't gonna happen.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that are gonna increase it just a little bit. My go-to is about 34 grams of carbohydrates a day total. And trying to keep those in a fasting, the non-fasting time of the day. So if I'm going to eat something outside of the fasting time of the day, it's gonna be fat, just fat. So that's gonna be a triple cream yogurt or a, like, 4 times of fat.
Or put a stick of butter in your black coffee.
Yeah, butter and black coffee.
Organic, of course.
Yeah, so butter and coffee. I eat avocados. I'll eat some macadamia nuts or something like that as well that have just a lot of high fat, but you're getting just a tiny bit of carbohydrate in that, right? Just a small amount of that. So what mechanisms help us gain control of all of this? So I'm going to talk about fasting a little bit later as well, but I want to talk to you about body processes that we have as tools to help us with this, okay? So who knows about the vagus nerve? About half the room. So the vagus nerve lights up all of this in the body. So it's coming from the brain, it's a 10th cranial nerve, and it's a giant part of our autonomic nervous system. So we have a sympathetic nervous system, a parasympathetic nervous system. In the parasympathetic nervous system, we have an autonomic nervous system. So in parasympathetic, when we're in rest and digest, you also have this autonomic system that's doing all the things you guys aren't thinking about right now. It's processing the food you just ate. It's beating your heart. It's making you breathe. It's making moisture in your nose so you can breathe, right? That's a lot of that is the cranial nerve 10. Cranial nerve 10 is this nerve right here. Look what it does. It constricts the bronchi. It slows the heartbeat. It stimulates peristalsis in the stomach and secretion. It stimulates bile in the liver, and it contracts the bladder, and it doesn't constrict the pupils and stimulate flow to saliva. That's not the 10th nerve. So just this right here, do you see how much is going on there? And what's pretty fascinating about the vagus nerve is that the gut can work without attachment to the brainstem. So most of our body is told what to do by our brain. Our nervous system runs everything. But the gut can run itself even without the nervous system being turned on. You've seen people in comas, but their gut's still processing, right? So this has something to do with part of what Dr. Judy was talking about earlier with the endocannabinoid system, because the endocannabinoid system is very largely connected here, and we'll go into that just a little bit, because the vagus nerve and the endocannabinoid system are very closely linked. In fact, anything that you have learned to do that helps stimulate the vagus nerve will also stimulate the endocannabinoid system. So have we heard about the gut-brain connection? We've heard about the gut-brain. Do we know what the gut-brain is? This is the brain that sense, that sixth sense that you know what's going on, like that gut feeling that you have. That is, I don't have the slide of it, but it shows how our gut is innervated. And there's a tremendous amount of neurons in the gut that are telling the body what to do, not just the gut, but the rest of the body. And there's some science now trying to figure out whether we're getting our information more from the heart brain and the gut brain than we are our neural cortex. So, talked about the endocannabinoid system. Who heard Dr. Judy speaking? Everybody was lovely. And just going through it a little bit so we're all on the same page, there's a CB1 and a CB2 receptor. These are just basics of the endocannabinoid system because there's a lot of MacGyvering happening in the endocannabinoid system more and more in science. What I mean by that is there's different receptors that have nothing to do with the receptors of the CB1, CB2, CB3 receptors. There's also a CB3 receptor now. But in essence, this is where you see the endocannabinoids receptors in the body. And our body makes 2 endocannabinoids. We make cannabinoids. One is called anandamide and one is called 2-AG. And I'll go through that just a little bit. I didn't pull up the slide, sorry. This is showing some more of the activity of let's see if I can maybe make it bigger now, but I can't. In essence, the endocannabinoid system is active in the whole body. And if you activate the vagus nerve, which is activating the gut, you're actually activating the endocannabinoid system, and if you activate the endocannabinoid system anywhere in the body, you're activating the vagus nerve. So, the compounding effect of the endocannabinoid system activation is a true game changer, because you have the endocannabinoids in the brain, the endocannabinoid receptors in the brain, you have them in the gut, you have them all over your body, and the thing is, they act in concert. And so if you have something going on in your gut, we're going to talk about the endocannabinoid. Has anybody heard that word before?
No.
So endocannabinoid is something that was talked about by Carl Germano, and he talks about the bacteria in the gut and the endocannabinoid system working in concert and telling the brain what to do. And so the gut-brain endocannabinoid, I don't know why that slide's blank, I don't know what's supposed to be there. As you activate and enliven the endocannabinoid system, the whole endocannabinoid system is signaling to the rest of the body to participate. All the systems in the body are unified to this effort. So if you have gut issues, let's just say you have a flora issue in your gut, you're going to have on the ground in your gut endocannabinoids doing what they have to do to help with that. But they're also signaling to the brain to create a response to take care of that for your gut. So they're going to produce hormones. It's going to tell your brain to produce hormones to take care of that issue as well. This is happening in our bones. It's happening everywhere. If you have bone osteoclast activity, if you're breaking down bone, you've got endocannabinoids in your marrow that are telling your body to produce endoblast activity, or did I say that right? Endoblast activity in your bone, and then your brain is also going to produce osteoclast activity. So that's what I meant, osteoblast activity here, and it's going to produce osteoblast activity in your brain as well. So it's doubling down. It's not just a medication that's going to tell your body to produce bone. It's here, and it's going to be in your brain telling your body. So it's a really brilliant strategy to help your endocannabinoid system be active, to help with the strategy of your body's process. And going just a little bit deeper into that, anandamide. Ananda, the root word is bliss. Ananda means bliss in Sanskrit. And anandamide is present during any blissful state. And the thing that's interesting is that anandamide is destroyed by FAAH, which is fatty acid amine hydroxide or hydroxy, what is it?
ACE, hydroxylase, it breaks down.
Hydroxylase. And guess what destroys FAAH? Cannabis. So if you want anandamide to be present, cannabis will break down the thing that breaks down anandamide, and it keeps anandamide around longer. There's a cool study that was done on people who have a propensity, they have a gene trait that doesn't produce enough FAAH. And one of the beautiful things about that is they have less stress in their lives because anandamide is just present longer for them. So they might be in the same, have you experienced people that have had major stress in their lives, but they're just smiling all the time? That's the like lucky gene that they've got, that they have more anandamide because it's not creating more FAAH breakdowns. So the thing that's interesting is that anandamide checks out during stress. So in a stressful situation, anandamide isn't around. Anandamide is that friend that sticks around for a party, but if the party's not there, they're gone, okay? So anandamide will not be helpful when you're under stress, but 2-AG does. A 2-AG is very helpful when you're under stress. But anandamide is around during any blissful state, any state of presence, any state of fulfillment. It's there for your evolved state of being, right? I'm going to bring you somewhere with this information in a second, but I want you to understand that anandamide doesn't like it when you're stressful. It won't stick around. So ways to activate the endocannabinoid system and the vagus nerve. Lifting weights or weight-resistant activities, meditation, intimacy, Wim Hof. Do you guys know what Wim Hof is? Jumping into an icy pool, doing breathing exercises. That's all activating the vagus nerve and the endocannabinoid system. Being present and breathing exercises. Let's do one really quickly. Could you all stand up for me, please? We just had lunch, so. All right, and you have your hands, your thumbs facing backwards, and your arms stretched out as tight as they can. And have you, if you can, close your eyes, but if you lose your balance, close your eyes, just have your eyes as like a dull focus. And you're gonna take a deep breath in your nose, and you're gonna hold it for about 5 seconds. And then you're gonna exhale. We're gonna do that 3 more times. Just do it at your own pace. Really deep breath in, expand your ribs. And a slow exhale. After that third one, I'm going to have you bring your arms straight up to the ceiling. Another deep breath in. Hold it for 5 seconds. And then exhale with your arms still up. Feel your ribs drop. And then drop your arms down to the ground or to the floor. Who's feeling more peaceful? Have a seat. That's one way we activate. And hemp or cannabis is also a way that we activate our vagus nerve and endocannabinoid system. So let's go through a little bit about, we talked about, Matt talked yesterday about the global south. What a troubling term. But the reality is there's a lot of people living at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? They don't have air, clean air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, right? They're living at a very low state of existence. And it's really hard to be in a state of not having a place to live or any of that and be able to be healthy in your body because that response is not helping you have the anandamide state that is helping you evolve past your troubles, okay? So it's pretty tough, but there are people that can do it. The next level is personal security, employment, resources, health, and prosperity. And the next level is friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. And that is basically where you need to be able to start, in that middle level, that blue level for love and belonging. Anything there and above is going to be a state of evolving past our physiological and emotional stressors. Are we understanding this? Okay, can we understand how that is affecting what we just talked about? This is looking at measuring emotions in hertz. So when we look at anything less than love, so love is 500 hertz, happiness, positivity, that's all love. Anything under that, the most drastic of that is apathy, depression, insecurity, guilt, shame, powerlessness, despair. And then everything right above, I find it interesting that reason, hope, and optimism isn't just quite where love is. And if we look at love in its real, true state of how it's helping us evolve past, is we have no agenda. So can we see how maybe reason and optimism is going to kind of try to inch you towards an agenda? I hope I get this. I hope. So love, in its true sense, is not having an agenda, but being present, right? In our present state of fulfillment and being fulfilled with just being. And anything above that, peace, joy, enlightenment, appreciation, empowerment, freedom, gratitude, God consciousness, these are all love and above. So guess what? The anandamide state is that. So if you activate the vagus nerve, which activates the endocannabinoid system, and if you can stay in a state of anandamide, you are in a state of love or above. You are in a place of being more present and more fulfilled. This is why I have a high performance hemp product on my table that has CBG in it, which activates the CB2 receptor, which is what anandamide occupies. It activates anandamide. So love and above, get clear on what's really important in your life and let go of what is not. Work on your body and mind. Involve your whole family. Where's my daughter? There she is. Join or create a conscious community. Is anybody here interested in 5D, fifth dimension? Is this something that this community talks about? Guy back there does. So 5D is, we're in 3D here, maybe some of us are inching towards 4D, and 5D is instant manifesting along with whole consciousness of working as a community towards solutions always. And anything that I'm seeing that is a positive solution, if you saw my 5G contraption back there, it's not blocking radioactive energy, it is transmuting it to a living state. All of the solutions that I work towards are trying really hard to work towards a positive solution rather than just stopping a bad solution. And I do think that this act is a physical act of evolution for us, that if we can all work on our state of presence and being out of fight or flight and in a state of love and above, we're going to have the ability to work past most of the issues that we're facing, especially in our body. And then how to fast for fat burning. This is back to the physical. So minimal transition would be to switch to 3 meals a day. If there's anybody that's doing more than 3 meals a day, this is where you start. Don't snack between meals, just have a meal in the morning, a meal in the middle of the day, and a meal early evening if possible, and then don't eat after that. An intermediate transition is to skip breakfast every other day, just do your lunch and your dinner. And what you're doing there is you're limiting the time that you're having an insulin response, as well as limiting the time that your body is eating altogether, right? So if you're only doing lunch and dinner, now you're not eating from, let's say 7 p.m. all the way till noon the next day, right? Can you see how you could maybe work towards this? If this seems challenging as an intermediate transition, you're likely in a state of sugar burning on a regular basis, and it's going to be really challenging, but you can work towards it. Maybe eat your breakfast later, like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and then eat your lunch around 1, and then eat your dinner a little bit early. Try to get that window of time that you're eating shorter, like a smaller window of time. And then the big change is alternate day fasting, so doing nothing but drinking water for a day at a time, and then extended fasting, 2 or 3 days of fasting on just water, and then going high fat, low carb to no carb in cycles. And then once hormones and insulin weight are at a better place, go back to the first 3 progression options. Is this making sense to people? You get a picture of this if you were interested in that already? All right, how are we doing on timing?
2:42.
3 minutes?
3 minutes.
It's 15 minutes, is that what you meant?
No, 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
You have 3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes. Wow, I rock. This is an actual horse, not in a state of love or above. And this is a same horse. And I am Dr. Eileen Karpfinger. You can find me. I left a flyer on your seat because that's got my name and email address and phone number in case you need to reach me. And my website is drei.com, doctorei.com. So I'm done with my presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Maybe come up to the mic.
I have seen so many different things about, they said like the cavemen used to eat 1 meal a day. Then I've seen things where you should eat multiple times a day, just smaller amounts, basically the same amount of food spread out throughout the day. So you're saying we should eat the meals closer together and then have a bigger wait period, or is that just for the fasting?
So if you saw what I showed about insulin and how insulin is triggered whether we have a, before the blood sugar is even raising in our bodies, the less you're doing that, the less roller coaster of creating an insulin demand on a regular basis, the better. So rather than it being about how short of a time you're eating, make sure the times that you are eating, that you're eating low insulin demand foods. And then if you can eat a late lunch and an early dinner and have a longer time that you're not doing any insulin activity is what we're looking at. So fasting is about insulin activity, period. That's basically what we're looking at, is trying to get off of the insulin roller coaster. Does that make sense? Okay.
Hi, Judy. Hi, thank you. And that was a brilliant talk, and in my own defense, I was supposed to talk after you, so I didn't explain all of that. So thank you for explaining all of that, because I knew what you were going to say. And so that's why some of what I was saying was a little disjointed, and the questions might come around. But so fatty liver and pancreatitis, the inflammation, again, those are, you're taking out the liver Kupffer cells, the macrophage of the liver, and we know that crosstalk is going on with the cannabis. So the cannabis juice, the cannabis is food you can use during the day, as you were saying, to get into ketosis. And so most people, because of all the toxins we've taken in, can't get there. And so,
and this helps it.
And what you were saying there was perfect as far as relaxing. That's why we know those things work, and everything that you were talking about, how to modify the diet, and healthy fats. That's what we were all trying to say. Our fat's not healthy. Our meat's not healthy. They're injected, and our own fat is not healthy. So you have to find glyphosate-free avocados, a lot of healthy fats, and the nuts. And this is part of the plague of corruption, because we've been told fat's bad. Bacon and eggs, folks, not Kellogg's cereal. You showed that very well with good bacon, clean bacon, with healthy fats, and cooking in real butter. You can take the casein out of it if you're sensitive.
Yeah, I think I didn't talk about healthy fats because I presume you all know what healthy fats are. I mean, if people are eating hydrogenated cookies in this room, I'd be surprised.
No fake fat. Yeah, right. So that's what you were saying. So that's how you stay in ketosis, because fatty liver disease is those cells that are supposed to be doing all the scavenging and detoxing in the liver can't, because they've been replaced by fat cells. And that's not your eating fat. And that's what your doctors think, because they're being lied to about health. And we all are, in order to create the industries that support, they're the ones with the commercials. So thank you for saying that much clearer. Dr. Rossetti and I were saying, I asked Frank the other day, what's the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic? Because even he said, I don't know. So, but in all of those things, we all have leaky bladders. With cannabis and healthy fats, you're like a camel. Think of them. They don't get water for a really long time. And so we're not getting clean water. That's bringing in more toxin. We're not getting minerals in our water, because in order to clean it, we have to take everything out. We've got a lot of aluminum toxicity and everything we heard about the last 3 days in our water, in our air. So actually all that water that we're drinking, 75 went out. It's got to be clean, and you've got to reverse osmosis, as we've heard. You have to do that. We have to put back the minerals, because they're ion channels. They're signaling with the minerals. And the minerals talk to the immune
Which, by the way, that water system that I have there isn't reverse osmosis. It's a pressure system.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was my question. Could you please explain the water system?
So that water system is just the pressure of the water is going through it, and it's a system that takes out all the fluoride, all the chlorine, chloramine, all the heavy metals, anything. The tests are amazing of how the filter is happening. Then it's restructuring the water. it's mineralizing it, it's alkalizing it, and then that extra red box that's on there, so that first box is doing all those other things, and then that red box is hydrogenation. So it's hydrogenating it, it's adding hydrogen to your water. And the ability for hydrogen to be in your water, you're gonna see it in other gadgetry. I've seen a couple things on Facebook that have like a water bottle that you put this little cake in, and it has hydrogen bubbling into your water. I have no idea how beneficial that is, but this is beyond anything I've seen in water systems, and I figured you guys can relate to it. It's really amazing. So if you ever want to check it out, if you call me about that, because there's no website for it, it's an app, and so I have to add you to that app, and I just put you in touch with the guy Kenny who's created it in Taiwan. So it's a good system.
Do you have filters for this, or it lasts 15 years?
It's a filter that you change once a year after the first investment. You change the filters and add a new hydrogen cartridge once a year for a family of 4.
How much is it run?
You guys sitting down? It's $3,700 for that. It's under the sink unit. It says top notch.
Is it alkaline?
It alkalizes.
Is it similar to Kangen? Have you heard of Kangen water? It sounds
You know,
very similar.
I know you're a Kangen fan. I know there's a lot of people here that are Kangen fans. I've watched Kangen for a while, and I've got a number of people that I really value what they do, and they've taken Kangen and then they've gotten rid of it. And so I don't have any offense on it. I just know that I really prefer this. I don't like to be, I like that this is just filtering the water. It's not altering the water. So I don't think Kangen water is structured. I think it's mineralized, I think it's alkalized, but I don't think it's structured. So you gotta do something to make sure it's structured again.
Can you use it, does it go into the sink? Can you use it for your shower?
There's shower filters that are way cheaper, and they don't do the hydrogenating, but they do everything else. And it's just a thing that you replace every 6 months. You replace a little cartridge in that. So it's great. It's really nice to have showers that don't have the different things coming out of the sky and the different things that the city's putting in the water.
So is this on the shower head, or I can envision what all this is, and this is.
No, that is under the sink, that one picture there.
This one,
They have a
this is
shower
an
head.
installed thing, a plumber has to install this, or is this?
No, my husband put
You
ours
can put
in.
it in a rental.
Hmm?
Can you put it in a rental?
Absolutely, yeah. You
Because
could put
it's
it.
you're not actually getting into the plumbing?
No, Aaron, explain it. It goes from the main source to the.
Yeah, it goes from the water main at the sink that the hose is attached to go to the faucet, and then you attach the hose on the back side of the machine. So it goes through, it just passes through the filters and stuff on the cold, well, we have the cold and hot attached, actually.
But we only use it
You
as
only use it
a
cold.
single spigot on the side. It comes with a spigot. The
So you have to
spigot.
install a sink, a countertop with another hole, or a sink with another hole?
No, it just sits under the sink.
So you get your water from under the sink? You open the door?
So if you don't have a hole for like a soap dispenser or something on your sink, I don't have the answer for that, but Kenny might. Like, I don't know what.
Oh, okay.
So
You have to have another hole for another faucet.
yeah, our sink already had that other hole.
So in terms of a rental place, probably not.
Do you have a dishwasher? Do you have a dishwasher? But the dishwasher usually has a little
Overflow.
overflow thing.
Yeah.
That's where we have ours, is we use that hole.
Most sinks have 3 holes.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. So, you mean, that's called an air gap.
Yeah, you know what it's called.
But you still have to have an air gap for your dishwasher.
You can jimmy it.
Okay.
Anyway,
Um,
we're talking, Christina and I are talking about the next session, trying to get Kenny to send me a unit that I can just plug into some water source here, and we can all have this water during the conference, because really to experience it was how I was like, are you kidding me? This is amazing. It's just good water. So,
Any other questions?
any other questions? All right.
I have one.
What?
I have one. Is it the filter strong enough, like a reverse osmosis, to protect you for your water source getting pathogens?
Yep, every pathogen. I think he talked about, I might be screwing up some things. He's tested every pathogen put through his filter, and nothing's surviving it. So, and heavy metals, fluoride, chlorine, chloramine, boron, all these other things that are in water. I mean, I know that we've heard of Flint, Michigan, but I know now that the city of Oakland is being told that there's some school systems that have lead in their water. I'm just not willing to mess with this anymore.
I told Flint, Michigan, just throw the cannabis in there and that'll clean up the water supply, but the first things, don't drink it. Or smoke it, or eat it.
Don't?
Don't, the cannabis out of the water.
Yeah.
Just throw the water in there and it'll clean it off all the lead away.
Yeah.
Just throw the cannabis in the water, just don't smoke it.
You got a question?
Yes. Could you comment on the standard dietitian's perspective? The standard dietitians, they say that high fat diets are not healthy. And they say that's not the way to lose weight because it's really water what you're losing. Because every time you break down glycogen, which your body is craving, right? And you need to break that, you need glucose to metabolize. Then it takes water to break down the glycogen, to metabolize the glycogen. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, so she said you need glucose to metabolize, and that's the science that's been debunked. So what most science is showing now is that the healthy system is using ketones to metabolize, not glucose.
Not the water that's required to break down the glycogen from the liver and
Drink good water.
and they see that that's not the way to lose weight. You really just losing water weight.
So I don't focus on weight loss in this process. It's a factor that's going to happen because you're gonna definitely start burning fat. But the point of why this is so important has more to do with your health than it does about losing fat. So I want you to be not using insulin as a regular moment-to-moment process. That's the only, and the reason I'm saying that is because I've seen, I have a whole family that's their lifestyle, and I meant to mention that at the beginning. I had an aunt who I thought was really cool, who had a brace down from here down that she had a fake leg. She had diabetic neuropathy and had her leg cut off, and that was just kind of a standard thing in my mom's generation. And I don't think we're any less capable of that demise with our current state of things. And even I have the ability as a very healthy person to eat healthy crap, right? There's plenty of stuff. There's all the, what are those, cassava everythings? I can get like Cheetos made of cassava. Nice, right? But that's still a powdered root that is definitely creating an insulin demand. So I'm working on it myself. And that's why I made this my own assignment to teach you so that I could really bring it home for myself.
So if, I have a fatty liver, I don't drink alcohol or take aspirin or anything, so it's from stress and whatever.
Yeah, your textbook, right?
Yeah. So once I heal, then after that, eating in a normal way, can I have a sweet potato or insulin carb?
Yeah, sweet potato isn't that much of an insulin demand. Regular potato is, but avoiding processed grains is just a no-brainer, and sugar. And every once in a while, your son gets married and you want to have some wedding cake. Once your system is adapting, you should be able to have insulin every once in a while as one of your strategies, right? But every once in a while, just like when there was a berry for that caveman, there was a slew of berries and they ate berries to their heart's content. They saw a honey hive and they ate a bunch of honey. they had a response for that, but most of their body was using those 5 other hormones to bring insulin up, or blood sugar up, because the rest of their diet was not designed for that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Wrap up.
All right, wrap up.
Pretty sure that you got it.
You can come talk. Thanks, you guys.